and welcome to Emerging Voices Unite Live. This is an episode about ideas that scale. I'm Nikki Estes here today with Jonathon Chambless. I'm saying this
That's it.
correctly. Chambless, founder of 𝘿𝙤𝙙𝙀𝙧𝙀𝙀 based in Atlanta, Georgia. Jonathon works at the intersection of AI, enterprise software, and one of the oldest industries in the world, the AEC, architecture, engineering, and construction. Today, we're going to talk about something that I think is genuinely misunderstood in the AI conversation: the difference between AI that's built for consumers and the AI that's built for enterprises. Jonathon, welcome. Tell us about who you are and what 𝘿𝙤𝙀𝙀 does.
Thank you. So Elevator Labs first is a enterprise SaaS software as a service lab. We power and build AI tools for architecture, engineering, construction, which really just means construction management, real estate development, regulatory compliance and workflow automation, what we call digital twin infrastructure. Basically, industries where the stakes are high, and if you get something wrong, people's lives can be in danger. I've been building in the space for about 5 or 6 years now, but I've been in construction management and real estate operations for most of my adult career at this point. Um, Basically, the software that shapes the physical world and the structures we live in. I feel like those industries have been underserved for a long time by the technology, and we're starting to see technology change that. The lower barrier of entry means that the tools available today really can change the face of the industry in a very short amount of time.
Well, let's dive into enterprise AI versus a consumer, because you've been on both sides, and maybe people in the audience, they'll assume that it's all about scale. Maybe a bigger company needs bigger software. Is that the right way to think about it?
Scale is a big part of it, but it's not necessarily the heart. Really, I look at it like a delight versus accountability. In consumer products, we look for the novelty. We look to see how something is new or different, or how it can add small value, or maybe a new innovation or a new change. In enterprise, you have to look from a holistic approach. Anything having to do with compliance workflows, building permits, regulations, submissions. If the specifications is not correct, then the project has to stop, right? So the meaningful distinction here is in the philosophy of how to design the product. Does it meet all of the guardrails for a professional use case, or is it just something you enjoy using?
Guardrails is one of your favorite words. I remember when we did the MLB event last week. It's like that was one of the technology has to have guardrails. Otherwise, it's not as helpful as it could be, right?
It could cause risk. Think about junior employees in any business. Usually, your first hires is potentially your highest risk, as they have the least amount of training and the least amount of experience. Why would you assume a fresh or new piece of software to your organization would be any different, right? And yet, most people treat the tools as if they are the expert. Right, the tool is the expert, and so having a humility in the tools that you're using, you can build a risk framework around those tools, which is what you're going to need in a business to business or enterprise application.
So when you say that the tools, you've said it's about trust. Um, what does that mean? Like, how can we trust technology? What does that look like?
Well, the first part of trust is understanding the outcome. We were talking about earlier before the recording. There's kind of three layers to agent-based frameworks or agent-based AI development. The first one is the prompt. Most people are familiar with prompt engineering. They type in a particular outcome they want to see, and they frame it to the best way that possible. After prompt engineering, we really get context engineering, which is okay, now that we have a good idea of what the outcome we are looking for, what are all the steps necessary in order to do that? And so you can specify that. Then there's a third layer, it's the people and the organizational goals. And so just because you have a piece of software that has a task, it doesn't necessarily assume that the alignment of that software is aligned with the goals or missions of the organizations. And so many of the problems you see in the frontier labs and all of the cutting edge products, it's very interesting that they're demonstrating how the technology can be a risk, but they're also demonstrating new use cases where when the specification is very clearly defined, you can get an automation return on investment. You can actually get an improvement in task delivery and workflow. But again, it all comes down to specification and alignment. And this is something you don't get just in a conversation with a frontier model.
So then what would be the difference between like a consumer using the technology versus a developer using the same technology for work? Like I use Canva, for some home projects, but then there's a different usage for our commercial at Market Me More. What kind of guardrail should be put in for someone using it at home versus using it at the office?
Sure. Well, really, enterprise software development hasn't really changed in that aspect. We've had cybersecurity and compliance and all of the guardrails that we talk about in agentic based systems. Really, what's new now is building a system in a loop, right? So we task a model or an agent with the ability to complete a task, and we ask it to continue going forward until it either completes its tasks,
Mhm.
or it fails. And so those with professional training in cloud architecture already had a head start in what an endpoint is. And an endpoint is, here is a controlled environment where we're giving it access to APIs and access to data, right? But it has to be done under these strict guidelines, these strict enforcements. And so I like to joke that the terminal, right, the way we interact with the internet, that is not a user experience most consumers are willing to have. Most aren't really desirous to deal with API keys. And so there's really a level of tolerance every developer needs to have in their journey of development. And that, are they comfortable with a chat bot and a language-based conversation that they're familiar with? But there are going to be limitations on that, right? There are going to be models and products and software that you can't use because they require use of the terminal. So I would say with any developer, software developer journey, you start with your own understanding of the product and the problem you're trying to solve. And in your case, Canva arguably is one of the best enterprise products in the creative or designer space. I think you're already in the right place. um, my recommendations for agent-based frameworks is actually multi-model. I think there's many services and many models that all add value, like a portfolio of apps,
Mhm.
right? Just like our phone works. We don't only use one app, we use many apps. And so I would encourage any new developer or any new AI agent developer to get your hands dirty, right? Use the chatbot, use the tools at your disposal. And if you decide you want to increase the potential automation, then just know that it comes with a specification requirement that if you're not familiar with the internet, the information is out there. It's not hard to find in this day and age the information needed to educate yourself to be able to build new, fun, and exciting things. I would just encourage you, as someone who's professionally managed risk for construction and for real estate operations, software is no different. Anything you build has risk, especially if you're asking more and more people to use it on a regular basis.
Mhm. I learned how to use ChatGPT by asking ChatGPT, "How do I use you?" That's
That's not a bad way to start. Just understand that every model has bias, right? And every model has its own unique value drivers. And
Mhm.
so, understanding each model or each software service as a voice in a chorus of voice turns you into a conductor, or in a software specification, an orchestrator. All right. If you're trying to conduct a business, you do the same thing with the staff in your organization. And to assume the software and the people wouldn't have to do it the same way at the same time, right? So this is where you go from a individual system design to a multi-personal organizational design system, or even a multi-organizational system, like in your case, in marketing, where we have to collaborate and coordinate with many voices all at the same time. You're an expert in that.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment here from Jay. When consumers shop, they utilize retailer AI chatbots. I find that chatbots can somehow detect our information. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think understanding data permissions is as important as understanding development frameworks, right? As you educate yourself to understand the potential of the tools, right? You also need to understand how the tools work. And not everyone's comfortable with learning down on a line by line code basis of how the tools work. But as anyone who has spent hours of conversation with a chatbot, right, as the level of technical specificity increases in that chatbot, you may find that your ability to communicate at a technical level increases. So yes, if you ask ChatGPT to teach you the skills needed to be a better developer and researcher, you may find you get those answers.
Well, I'll continue learning. Oh, can you do that with Claude and with some of the others? Will they teach you how
Yes,
to do your own system?
Yes, the frontier models have been built in a way to understand the internet at large as it exists and as we all live in it. So if what you're trying to build involves using information available on the internet, or what I'd call open source work, the tools are available, they're out there. And I would highly encourage any AI developer to get their experience on open source tools as much as closed source tools. But I will acknowledge it's difficult to build a quality, secure, and compliant product purely on open source tooling. Right, this is where the weak of heart, right, would probably be encouraged not to play, in that you're intentionally asking risk upon yourself, and you would need to bring it a risk management framework. And if you're not comfortable with a risk management framework, then um, maybe educate yourself in those areas, or guard yourself to a lesser level of development while you're still learning. Like I said, all of the models add value. They all can help you contribute to your portfolio of tools as a developer and as a member in your organization. I mentioned in a previous comment, every organization needs an AI strategy. I think every member of an organization needs an AI strategy. My hope is that the organizational strategy and the individual contributor strategy are in alignment. Otherwise, that organization is going to have a difficult time, as we already see at scale with many of the leading organizations right now. All right, even the frontier technology platforms are all trying to understand and develop their AI strategy. So distilling this down to more of a broad understanding, not everyone needs to be a coder. Not everyone needs to code. But if you use the models, you need to understand the data permission structure, which is in the settings of each of those services. And you need to have what I call a heart of discovery, meaning you need to be honest with what you don't know, but be inquisitive, ask questions, and more importantly, get more than one source of truth. If you're relying on any one model to be a complete source of truth, or any software service provider for that matter, if you're relying on one source of truth, you're putting all of your eggs in one basket. And this is why I encourage multimodal frameworks where we're leveraging the strengths of each model and each service provider as a chorus of voices to get an outcome, right? We started with a basic prompt, we moved into a context prompt, and now we're at a outcome prompt. The outcome prompt I would encourage for any organization is an AI strategy that aligns with all of the employee AI strategies in a way that automates, but adds compliance reporting and adds value. And in my case, in construction management, there's usually a lot of people organization. There's a lot of communication organization and a lot of documentation organization. So when life and safety are on the line, your guardrails become even more important.
Mm. Esau saying the terminal scary, and Jay's jumping in here, and I hear you, like the scary parts. Like we're talking about some things that maybe don't always come out. We hear about the fraud with payments, maybe, but with construction and dealing with people, I guess this is their job site where they're supposed to be, the safety. What other kinds of tasks are being held in there for the construction that helps them to be safe?
Well, I'd say in most industries, most people heavy industries, the limitation of AI is actually human trust, right? It's not the fact that the technology can't improve workflow or task management. It's that the systems that each of the employees or each of the members to the job site, right? How all of their data systems flow between each organizational member, right? And how that connects with the project. So I talk about software like water, right? You don't really have to understand how the plumbing works to understand why a pipe works or why a valve works, right? When a plumbing system in a building is built correctly, then you don't understand the specifications for the plumbing or the specifications for the valving, but you do know that it meets all of the requirements as specified by the architect. And so, in many ways, software developments for organizations are the same way. Once there is a organizational strategy or an outcome in place, then it becomes the alignment or the digital transition phase, where you look at all of the members of your organizational in a holistic approach, and you design people and agents as endpoints because that's what they are to this day, right? We're all a collection of APIs and data access and permissions, right? And so when our permissions and data flows are all working correctly in alignment, then just like the plumbing in a building, the water comes out. And more importantly, the fire suppression systems works, which means like in a similar capacity that happened for Samsung not too long ago, when an employee copy and pasted a piece of proprietary code from their database into ChatGPT, right? Then it was found to have been a source of conflict because the model was trained on that data, and therefore Samsung had to ban ChatGPT's use in the engineering team, right? So it's a very fitting example at the highest level of engineering, but it should be a message to the entire industry in that yes, we can compromise our security and allow automation at breakneck pace, right? But at what cost? Is it information property? Is it monetization? Is it compliance? And in most people's case, it's security. It's that, do you want to use tools that publish your secure proprietary information? Chances are no. And that takes a little bit of research. That's definitely a conversation you want to have with any model you're using, is what are the implications of my data, right? That's
Mhm.
a really good way to start off a conversation.
So Jay was asking, how does it change AI? How does it change the way we become successful in today's workplace? Because we can see the security aspect and prompting it saying, I want to be able to protect the data that I'm harvesting here or I possess. But how do we go from there to be successful, whether it be in a non-technical type of environment, a non-technical type of job? How can we use AI to do that?
Sure. I would describe it like a layered approach. You want multiple layers, ideally for every organizational member and every organization. And your foundational layer ideally would be security, right? It'd be risk mitigation. And so it's understanding the basic enterprise or non-consumer risk of using consumer products in an organizational capacity. Most frontier models have organizational services, meaning you can pay for a service, and the IP protection of that model usage goes to a enterprise grade. Right, that's a very good first step for most small to medium businesses. The second all is having a model use policy as an organization, right? So, what can and cannot we do within our risk framework for each of the members' organization? And once that risk framework is put in place and we know what we can't do, right? Then we can make a holistic plan for each of the members or organizational members or nodes, as we like to put it in software, and we can build a modular system where each of the nodes increase automation and value over time without compromising security or risk.
Wow. So, who do you find to hire to do something like that? What does that look like? Is that under the umbrella of Elevator Labs? It's like that's
Sure.
great. Like, how do you know? You have to go find somebody that can build that for you.
Sure. Well, we had a comment earlier. Esau. Esau is a partner client of Elevator Labs, and he understands the pains himself of the terminal and the difficulties of employing frontier models to live projects. And so he runs a company called bigapp.work, right? And Elevator Labs is a partner for bigapp.work. And we offer compliance management and automation management and tools for live projects. We want to work with many contractors and many projects. I have been blessed to work with many contractors and developers in the state of Arizona and now in Georgia. I'm in Atlanta, and I like to joke that I'm in my grandfather's city now, doing something my grandfather did. He was a industrial valve salesman, and so now, understanding the flow of data and the flow of software, I find myself as a digital valve consultant and salesman. But really, it's the education. There's not a lot of information not available out there if you're willing to look. It really comes down to trust, right? I said AI's limitation is on human trust. So most people don't have the time or the tolerance to learn a new language or to learn a new framework or to learn specification for software development. Okay. And in that cases, I would say you want to have a trusted partner. Okay. Just like a construction general contractor or developer would hire my grandfather to spec out a valve for their building, they didn't hire him for all of the plumbing. They hired him for a valve. And so he fitted a valve for their project, and he made sure the specification, the engineering was correct. In some cases, he was brought in as a consultant for an entire architectural build for all of the plumbing of something large like an industrial or infrastructure. This is where I find I spend a lot of my time in infrastructure services and helping organizations structure plans from a holistic standpoint. But really, open source tooling can be a good first step for most people to see what their tolerance for risk is. And I would say if you're a business owner or organizational operations, you need to understand that you are managing risk for your organization, not just yourself.
So, what's the hard part about infrastructure when it comes to AI?
Um, uh, really permissions, right? Really understanding permissions and risk frameworks. We talked about the event build, measure, learn, share. This is a North Star for Elevator Labs and kind of a compass I have used in a world where we're all just many nodes, all collectively looking for a better outcome, usually connecting with a node that appears to be trustworthy or has proven a track record of being able to do so. That's a good first place to start. And
Mhm.
so I'm blessed to have many partners and advisors and mentors in my journey, which has been scoped for construction management and real estate operations. But the lessons I have learned apply broadly and generally for most organizations, in that every general contractor and developer need an AI strategy. Every project needs an AI strategy. So it gives you a good framework to apply the build, measure, learn, share
Mhm.
for for any project or system that is looking for automations or tooling to improve the task management and workflow.
What kind of questions should we be asking when we're doing this?
Um, Usually the first thing I try to discuss with a new project or a client is holistic outcome engineering, right? So what are the goals of the organization? What are the goals of the projects? What are the goals of the team members? How does the AI strategy between all of these parties, each as nodes, work collectively, modularly with the organization, right?
Mhm.
And then we can create an endpoint spec for each of these nodes to say what are the risks, what are the security requirements, what are the privacy requirements, right? And again, if this is just um, consumers, if this is just a club or your friends, right? Then the risk is lower. But if you're representing an organization, obviously there needs to be a clear risk mitigation or risk management framework in place.
I believe Troy Merkel, he's commented here, would agree. He says, I absolutely love the idea of having security as the base layer. AI utilization varies drastically from company to company and even more between industries. And if you don't start with security, you're opening yourself up to more risk than anyone can tolerate.
Don't create more technical debt for the people in your organization because you couldn't ask the question first. Any CIO, CTO, CSO have been dealing with these problems from a corporate position for many years. Software hasn't been redefined. What's really happened is the barrier of entry is being lowered. The gates are being lowered to what can be accomplished without any engineering training. However, those gates are being lowered because the risk is no longer being managed, right? We're offloading that risk management to a node level. So we have to be careful with how we use the tools for organization, even as the tools improve in capability and capacity. But again, as long as we have a holistic plan and we have a framework for managing our risk and security, specifically information property monetization, right? That this is what will make or break organizations in what we call the digital transition. We've been in a digital transition. The AEC industry has been in a digital transition for about 20 years, right? But the transition's not ending with the singularity, it's just speeding up.
I mean, I can see your whole plumbing relationship here, building it out. We had our house replumbed one time, and how many different places that plumbing mattered in the different rooms. And if one place was a point of failure, then we had leaks in another place, or the toilet was backing up and then the shower was backing up. So you have to have every single node, every single valve taken care of very well. So that's neat. You got to watch your grandfather in that way, and you're seeing it as a digital plumber.
Understanding that not all plumbing flows well and not all software works like water gives me the opportunity to communicate in the best way possible I can to the marketplace of how a service provider builds trust with that understanding, because not all plumbing works correctly and not all software flows like water.
Sometimes it gets backed up and people might flush the wrong things down it, huh? Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can put information into a model that we shouldn't put for the purpose of data privacy, and
Mhm.
therefore expose our information property because it's convenient and it's easy and it helps get the job done faster, but it may cause more risk for the organization downstream.
Mhm. That makes sense. So then how have you seen with the AEC industry versus like healthcare or finance? Like what are the different ways that people are using AI?
Well, in the cases of regulated software businesses, the barrier of entry is compliance reporting. And so most people don't start off their conversation with their frontier model with what are the compliance reporting of this
Mhm.
chat thread, right? And this is where building software from specifications versus just using software as a novelty, right? This is the difference between someone who is vibe coding, right? Or prompt engineering or context engineering, or maybe even building super sophisticated automation systems without a human in the loop, right? But the human has to act as the guardrail because the human has to represent the organizational alignment as a node, right? And so the more human we take out of the loop, the faster the automation process, but also the risk. The more human we put into the loop, the slower the automation, the more scaffolding or framework we need, right, as a alignment for all of the nodes in our organization. And so really recognizing what tools you want to employ for your strategy, for your organization, or for just yourself and for your education purposes, right? Go into it with a plan. Make sure you have a plan for what you're trying to accomplish, and don't be afraid to ask others. And don't be afraid to ask the internet, right? The internet has some of the best tools on the planet at your fingertips. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to recognize a risk tolerance and an
Mhm.
outcome you'd like to have with your AI strategy.
So obviously I could say to our audience here to follow you, but what are some other resources, some podcasts, books that you've read or sites to go to? Could you list any of that for those watching?
Sh- Yeah. So the uh, hmm. Some of my favorite YouTubers are in fact AI engineers, right? Who are kind of reporting from the trenches of designing new automation systems that are kind of pushing the human out of the loop. And usually what it means is they talk about why it broke. And so as someone who encourages human in the loop systems, I would say I actually believe that the human can be better because of the loop. And so there are a number of good content creators out there who talk about loop-based agentic frameworks and open source tooling. My partners at 𝘾𝙤𝙣𝙩𝙚𝙧 Foundation, I'm blessed to be a governor of the 𝘾𝙤𝙣 Foundation and the 𝘾𝙤𝙣 Network. It is a blockchain network. I am blessed to see all of the tools that are being used in the blockchain industry to support and validate and offer a technical foundation for new AI tools. I would say all of the research labs are releasing white papers and research at breakneck speeds. So it's really no shortage of data. I would say it's really coming down to framing and anchoring, right? Framing what the information you're looking for and anchoring it in the outcome you'd like to have, right? I would say every industry has teams who are
Mhm.
leading in AI development and who are pushing products. Your compliance, your finance, your Web3 tokenization, Centrifuge.io is an organization I've been an ambassador for many years.
Mhm.
They're a tokenized equity platform, and they have been a leader in the space, a partnership with S&P and several other leading financial institutions who are demonstrating how blockchain can be used for tokenization and finance in this place. And so when you start with a foundation of compliance and reporting, then you can add more tools that I think we're going to be using for identity management and payments.
Mhm.
The team I work with at MicroPay, my partner Benoit Jose and Dante Cervantes, we've been for a couple of years now. We've been looking at how payments can be automated, payments compliance. We call KYC. I know your customer, KYB, know your business, KYA, know your agent. So the specifications for payments compliance, we think this is going to change how money moves broadly for most organizations as we're seeing automations in payments. And then my research lab, Elevator Lab, I'm doing my best to get more and more research content put out about the projects that we're using. I've been honored to be partnered with Invenium Capital Groups for the last 4 years. They have been a leader in the space for commercial real estate tokenization, agentic frameworks, and data rooms for compliance and finance. They're a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation endowment, and I believe raised $150 million last year from AGD in Abu Dhabi. So I'm in a unique position that I'm blessed to have some very powerful and influential advisors and mentors in my life. But the
Mhm.
message I'm trying to share is that you don't need that. You don't have to have that. You can simply have a heart of a builder. You could simply want to use tools around you to build better things and better systems. And if you have a willingness to try and fail, you'll find most people today can improve outcomes in their lives with the tools available. And after you get your hands a little dirty, then you'll find there are layers to the tools, and then maybe you can appreciate some big tools like big caterpillar trucks and tractors and dump trucks, and right, these are a wonderful representation of the time tested industrial tools that we use for construction management, right? And the software tools we use will not be much different.
So what you're telling me is that wherever it is in your journey, You start where you are, you use what you have, you do what you can. That was one of our sayings too, right? That you can, and you also, you build, you measure, you learn, and then you share what it is that you're learning. I mean, those seem to be very key to this journey of learning AI, whether it's for the consumer or for the enterprise at any stage where they are.
The tools at your disposal. Just try to use more tools. Try to
Mhm.
use the tools towards your AI strategy, and then try to align your tools and AI strategy with your organizational tools and AI strategy. It really is that simple.
Now, Jay's out here. He's asking, what got you interested in AI bots, chat bots, and the various automation?
Having worked in a compliant heavy and human heavy industry of construction management and real estate operations, I have had firsthand experience with AI tools that improve the quality of life for our end user, which is asset owner or a community owner, right? Community manager. And
Mhm.
I can tell you from experience that we have iterated many, many times in the industry. And even today, the tools don't always work the way they're supposed to, but the velocity of the capability of the tools are increasing. So, from my own experience of seeing real estate operations and construction management tools, software tools for the last 15 years, I can tell you the barrier of entry for new automation and new tooling is never been lower, but you do accept the risk framework by using those tools both personally and professionally.
So, where do you see this going? I mean, if, like, I know things are changing year to year, month to month, so you can't give me like a super long trajectory, but what do you think is going to happen from where you are right now?
Sure. I like to describe it like the digital tractor and the digital sharecropper, right? And so very few people realize that when the tractor truly became distributed throughout the United States, the amount of people who were used in agriculture or food production dropped by about 80 to 90% over a 10-year period. That's a substantial change in the industry. But the people didn't just stop doing things, right? They found other purposes for their lives and other ways to be useful. We just needed less physical labor in order to grow food. I see AI and frontier models in a similar capacity in that there'll be less tasks that need to be personally overseen when the agent-based systems are designed to a spec that is safe and manage or mitigate risk and are secure, right? So we're going to see another shift, but what we shift into, I'm not sure. As someone who's tracking some of the bleeding edge human out of the loop system development, we're still so super early. Despite the capabilities of tooling improving on a daily or weekly basis, we're still not making magic, right? We're still not making alchemy. We're still not making gold yet. The limitations we have for risk mitigation didn't change significantly with agents as opposed to cloud, right? And understanding the potential risks involved in agentic systems for software development is really just a continuation of that risk management framework. So the information is out there, it's available, you can get training on it relatively easy. But if you understand the risks and challenges you're trying to overcome, the tools themselves are iterating, right? The models are iterating. And so how the industry you work in my case, Autodesk, right? How we build 3D models and digital twins for construction. I personally think those 3D models are going to have more automation control on the physical structure. We're going to move human away and out of the loop, and we're going to use a live 3D model used as a source of truth. However, the risk of doing so, just like a Waymo, the risk of taking a driverless car or autonomous vehicle, you take the risk by taking that vehicle. There will still be risk mitigated and managed risk with autonomous systems for real estate. But I like to joke, an autonomous building doesn't just get up and walk away. It just makes decisions without your permission.
Yeah, right. Is the Waymo making decisions without permission? Like, can the person, I haven't ridden in one yet. Is the person riding in the car, can they tell it to like change course?
I love Waymo. I love Waymo. The best thing about Waymo is taking a video from the back seat through the front windshield, demonstrating that you're on the road driving, but they're not being a driver in the car. You send that to a meeting you're about to arrive to, and it sets the tone for the entire conversation that you got there without a driver.
I will risk it at some point. This is not today. Well,
Well, they're not without risk for sure, and there have been accidents, but the Department of Transportation has created a framework for risk mitigation that Google and many of our top labs have been managing as a framework for autonomous vehicles and how we manage autonomous systems broadly. And so, if you think about autonomous software agents, they were literally just modeled off of autonomous systems, autonomous vehicles, right?
mhm.
And so it's again, it's just understanding a safety and risk management framework.
Okay. Well, we have more to learn then. So
Absolutely.
this is one of those times I'm going to give you an opportunity to give something for the audience to leave with. But I want to thank Jay, Troy. We had Larry here, Abdullah, Esau. We had Corey, Benoit. Is there anyone else that you'd like to give a shout out to today before you tell us you're going forward?
The Cinefuge team for all of their support of me for the last couple of years. I'm excited to have more information coming from them soon. The Accumulate Network and the Foundation, we've got some really exciting things coming down the pipeline from MicroPay here in Q2, and Benoit will probably be speaking more on that in the coming weeks. And then, yeah, if you are in the Atlanta area and you're excited about architecture, engineering, construction, real estate, or how they interact with AI, please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to collaborate and see how we can help.
Awesome. And we'll be talking next week. We'll have another event to be able to dive into the founder side, how we can use these tools more effectively. But before that, I'd like for you to give us one last story. And I know that you wanted to tell us more about your grandfather and the career that he had and how you have mirrored that. Please share that story with us as we wrap up.
Sure. So I recently had been thinking about him, and I have spent the last 20 years of my life in Phoenix, Arizona. I've had the opportunity now to come back to Atlanta to work. And I have thought about, the parallels between my grandfather's work in industrial valves distribution, right? And the parallels and understanding that software like water and functional plumbing are really built on trust, right? My grandfather's customers called him because they had a construction project, or they had a hospital, or they had a large building, and they needed a solution. They needed an outcome. And rather than spending the time and energy that it takes to become an expert, what they did is they just called my grandfather. They had a trusted relationship with someone who knew the industry, knew the specifications, knew the safety, knew the risk management, knew the implication of what it would be like if that organization for that building or the people responsible for that building failed, right? If the plumbing failed, right? They knew it was not only the building owner, but it was my grandfather's reputation on the line. And that's a trust, a level of trust that AI doesn't just generate, it doesn't create. That's something that a human builds, and a human builds over time with another human. And so I would like to think that in a world where agents are doing more and more tasks for us, I would be mindful of the task that only the human can do. And what my grandfather represents to me is someone who understands the importance of a valve and understands the importance of the trust involved with the plumbing of a building working, especially the fire suppression system, right? And I'm inspired to come back to his city of Atlanta, and share my expertise and my mentors and partners as a framework in a similar capacity where he has, so that I can develop trust just like he did in the city he built trust in.
Thank you. Thanks, John. He'd be really proud. Is he going to be able to watch this?
No, unfortunately, he passed away about 5 years ago.
Mm.
But I think very fondly and highly of him, and now even more so because I've never really appreciated a valve in my entire life. Really, it's one of many construction parts that I don't think a whole lot about. But he put a lot of thought into valves. He spent a whole career in valves, and so it really gave me food for thought on how important a digital valve would be for my business.
So you get to, in a way, live out building the legacy, continuing his legacy. I
If
appreciate
I
you.
do my best.
I appreciate it. Yes. Well, the future of AI, I appreciate you unpacking some of this for us and looking at the different business models versus consumer models. We seek to be able to talk about this, right? With the voices, we want to amplify the messages that maybe just don't get talked about in public. And so I appreciate you taking this time and scaling my knowledge. I have more research to do. I'm going to go and look up Centrifuge and see what they're about, and some others that you mentioned you can put into the comments after the fact so that others can go and follow those companies, check out those people. But John, as always, I appreciate your time and the value that you bring to LinkedIn, and I look forward to doing this again with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, Nikki. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, those of you that came today, we appreciate your attendance. If you are watching this on replay, sure enough, you can put hashtag replay in the comments or reach out to us and we can have the conversation about what we discussed today. John can go much more in depth. This Saturday, we'll be publishing a newsletter to summarize the highlights. And if you have more to add to the conversation, again, I'm Nikki Estes. This is Jonathon Chambless.
Got it.
Estes and Chambless. That's great. All right. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.